Hey family, Eve here. So family, this video that I'm about to create is a video. I'm going to title it Passover. But before I get started, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So let's get started. So family, the reason I'm doing this video on the Passover is because this year the Passover is so significant. It's always been significant, but this year the Passover represents this year what it represented from the very first Passover, from when God first brought the children of Israel out of bondage in Egypt the first time. This Passover right here is symbolic for the exact same thing. When he told the Pharaoh, he sent Moses and Aaron to tell the Pharaoh to let my people go so that they may serve me. Right? So this time, right now, the time that we're in right now, that's the reason I said this one is just as significant as the first one is, because God is bringing us out of Egypt again. You remember I told you this place is known as Egypt because of bondage, the bondage that we did here the last 400 years, same as the bondage they did in our forefathers did during their time in Egypt when he brought them out and they operated in the wilderness for 40 years. This right here is the same thing. 40, 400, they kind of symbolic for the same thing. The time is simply the same, really, if you look at it in God's sight. The time is the same. But they did time in Egypt the first time. I think it was around like almost 400 years too. Maybe not as long, maybe 350 years, something like that. But here we did 400 years, but they're operating in the wilderness for 40 years. It's being lost is the same thing as us being here in this country being lost for 400 years. The 40 and the 400 are really basically the same thing to God. So this Passover, the reason I said, like I said, it's so significant is because God is bringing us out of Egypt again. He's freeing us. He's bringing us liberty. Um, he said we was going to do that 400 years of slavery in the book of Genesis. He mentioned it, 400 years to Abraham. He was Abram at the time. But he said we was going to come back to him in the fourth generation, meaning he said they'll come back hither again, meaning come back to him. Hither, he's referring to himself, where he was going to make us his children and he was going to be our God again. So that's what's taking place right now. And like I said, so this year the Passover is so important, so that's why I'm making a video, so in case a lot of our people want to do the Passover, at least they'll have an idea of where to go in the Bible to look it up and kind of research, and then they'll have some indication of how to go about doing it. He got it all right in there for you, and I'm gonna read some passages or some verses to take you there, to show you where he talks about it. And so we know that Jesus was the blood sacrifice where he died. He shedded his blood for us to save us. So we know that's what the Passover is symbolic for. His him, the sacrifice that he made. And the children of Israel, Jesus wasn't born at the time when the first Passover took place, because the children of Israel was just coming out of bondage. But Jesus was being born. His birth was happening when we got ready to go into captivity these last 400 years. It was saying in the book of Matthew chapter 1 verses 16 through 18, it says the birth of Jesus was on the wise, meaning it was being talked about during that time. It was being talked about. Even though he hadn't been born, it was being talked about of his coming, because we was going into captivity. And when we went into captivity, that's exactly what he was being born for, to come to save us. See, so like I mentioned in one of my videos, I think it's the video I did on, it was Denzel, something had to do with Denzel. But I was telling you guys the book of Malachi and the book of Matthew. It was a 400-year period between those two prophets. Malachi was the end of the Old Testament and Matthew was the beginning of the New Testament. So it was a 400-year period between that. That was symbolic for the time that the children of Israel was going to serve and be in bondage here in America, which is also known as Egypt. And I've told you guys that several times. So it's also known as Egypt, Babylon, Sodom, and what else? Babylon, Egypt, Sodom, and it's one other one. And I'll think of it in a second and I'll tell you. But however, so that time period between Malachi and Matthew was Jesus was being talked about coming. because he was being born for the sake of us. So right when Matthew, the prophet Matthew, it was being taught, Jesus was, his birth was getting ready to happen and take place. So yeah. So let's get started. Really started. So the Passover represents this generation of the children of Israel that God is delivering from bondage right here, right now in Egypt. He has spoken to the elite, or the people who has kept us in captivity, which are considered the Pharaoh. Remember, I told you the Pharaoh is considered the government. So he has spoken to them, and through his word, they know that after that 400-year period came back, what was going to happen, and he was coming to deliver us from bondage. So they already know what's going on. They already know it's judgment. They being judged right now for the captivity and the evil that they did to his children when they were in captivity. So yeah, they already know. So that's just like when he sent Moses and Aaron to tell the Pharaoh to let his people go so that they may serve him. This is what he said to them: let my people go so that they may have served, so they may serve me. Meaning, quit putting all, still got them signing contracts, got them still worshiping your gods and things like that. He's saying let them go. Let them go so that they can serve me. But if they don't, he gonna do the same thing. He's doing the same thing now because they not letting our people go. So he doing the same thing now to these people that he did to the government of Pharaoh when he brought them, when he brought us out of, our forefathers out of bondage the first time. The flies, the nets, all the storms, all of these things happening, the water turning into blood, the rivers drying up. It's so many things that's going on that you can see that it's judgment, that this place is being judged. Um, so yeah. So let me go ahead and let me explain to you the Passover, and go from there. So the Passover is the time of our forefathers when death passed over the children of Israel during their time in Egypt, when the Most High was about to deliver them from Egypt. See how the death angels passed over. So the Passover is when the children of Israel, when they were getting ready to be free, God was getting ready to bring them out of Egypt from bondage. They were sacrificing. They sacrificed a lamb. So he told them, with that sacrifice, which Christ is the symbolic for Christ. Like I say, he's the Lamb of God. He's the Son of God, the child of God. So the lamb, a lamb is a baby sheep, right? So Christ is his God's baby, like his son. So the reason he's symbolic for the sacrifice of the Passover is his blood was shed. So they shedded the blood of these lambs when they killed them to sacrifice them for the Passover. So that blood that from the lamb, they took it and they put it on they put it across the doorpost. So when the death angel came to deal with these Egyptians, they would pass over every house that had the blood, because they knew that house represented Jesus or the Most High. So when that happened, and they didn't have blood over their doorposts, their whole household was smoked. God killed them. Everybody in the household, especially firstborn. So yeah. So the Passover, the holy time or days to remember and observe by the children of Israel in accordance with their deliverance from slavery, bondage by the hands of the Most High, Pharaoh, from the Pharaoh of Egypt in Egypt. So the book of Exodus 13:3-4 and 6-7 says, and Moses said unto the people, remember this day in which ye came out of Egypt, from out of the house of bondage. For by strength of hand the Lord brought you out from this place. There shall no leavened bread be eaten. So at the same time, the Passover is going on. The feast of unleavened bread is also taking place. So what the feast of unleavened bread represents is that it says that let me read on before I kind of give you the breakdown. It says, this day ye came out in the month of Abib. 7 days thou shalt eat unleavened bread, and in the seventh day shall be a feast unto the Lord. Unleavened bread shall be eaten 7 days, and there shall no leavened bread be seen in thy quarters. That's saying that, okay, leaven is yeast. When you put yeast in bread, it causes the bread to rise. So symbolically, that that unleavened bread, Number one, when the children of Israel was coming out of Egypt, they didn't have time for their bread to rise because they was moving. They was trying to get out of there. And two, the unleavened bread. Leaven is symbolic for, uh, Jesus told his disciples, he said, beware of the leaven of the scribes and the Pharisees, meaning these other nations, beware of their leaven, meaning, like I said, leaven is to cause the bread to rise. He was saying they're going to rise to power. And when they rise to power, they're going to do evil and wickedly. So you have to be careful of their ways, of their evil, and don't fall to it. So that's what the leaven is also symbolic for. So that's why God said, don't put leaven in your bread when you're preparing it for the Passover too, because leaven means the rise of evil, and the 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 sacrifice is the blood of the lamb, meaning the sacrifice is symbolic for Jesus and his blood, and the leaven is symbolic for the evil of these people. So good and evil does not mingle. Like you can't, you, because you're his child, you're a seed of, or you're a child of Israel, and you're God's chosen. That makes you righteous. So that means you don't take part in the evil of what's going on. And like I said, the Pharaoh is considered the government, and Jesus represents God. So you can't take part in this old wicked evil government if you call yourself a child of God. So that's what the leaven is really about. So the book of 1 Corinthians 1 and 7 says, it is reported commonly that there is no fornication among you. Such fornication is not so much as named among the Gentiles, that one should have his father's wife. Or it's just talking about the sins of their sins, the sins that I guess that will cause them not to be able to participate or be cut off from the Most High, from his blessings, and not be a member of the Passover or participate in the Passover. It says, purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. For Christ our Passover is sacrificed for us. So it says, purge out the old leaven, mean all the old ugly ways, so that you may become a new lump, mean a new creature, a new person. And it says, for even Christ our Passover is sacrificed for us. Christ even did these things. He fasted, sacrificed. He sacrificed for us, meaning he became sin, so that he can die for us, sacrifice for us. And then once he bared our sins, then when he resurrected, he became new. He became a new creature, new man in God, a new, yeah. So yeah. Exodus 23:15 says, thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded thee in the time appointed of the month of Abib. For in it thou camest out from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. Meaning, bring your sacrifices to him during the Passover. As Joshua 5:10 says, and the children of Israel encamped in Gilgal, and kept the Passover the 14th day of the month at evening in the plains of Jericho. So like I told you guys, the first day of the month, the first month, according to the Hebrew calendar, is March. If you go by the Gregorian calendar, which we go by now, is the Greek calendar. January is the first month. So the March is called the month of Abib or Nisan. It has several names, but yeah. So the reason, again, I told you guys that you keeping the Passover this year is powerful, is because it says here, it says keep the Passover on the 14th day of the month. This year, Passover start on the 14th day of the month. God is so strategic. He got this thing all mapped out. It's all, he got it, boy. Everything he said in the beginning, it just played out right here to the end. Happened just like he said it. The Passover this year starts on March 14th and ends on March 21st. That's 7 days. And he said on the seventh day, which is the Sabbath, he said, after you kept his feast, then ye shall keep the Sabbath. You see that? He said you rest and you don't do nothing in that day. How about it? Well, when I tell you he's so strategic, I don't know why these people playing with him. Why? This is serious. He's so strategic with his time. in his order and his dates. It just all lining up. Everything is lining up. The book of Numbers 9:13 through 14 says, but the man that is oh no, I'm not gonna read that one. Let's go to John 13:1 through 3. It says, one says, now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour was come, that he should depart out of this world unto the Father, having loved his own which were in the world, he loved them unto the end. Meaning he loved us till he died. He died. He gave it up, gave everything up, sacrifice. It said to the end. He loved us to the end. He walked this earth and he suffered for us. It says, and the supper being ended, the devil having now put into the hearts of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, and to betray him. Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hand, and that he was from God, and it said, and he was from God and went to God, meaning he descended from God and he ascended, or you can say it the other way around. He descended and then he ascended back. So he came from God and he went back to him. And he said he put all things in his hand, meaning he gave him power over everything, heaven and earth. And I did a video on that where it says when he died and was resurrected, he conquered death. That's how he gonna be able to put Satan to death, because he lived and he died. So he had power over the living and the dead, both. So yeah. So that's how he was able to have dominion and to rule, because he lived and he died. So he can is everything he can do everything. Yeah. It says Ezra 6:19 and 20 says, and the children of captivity kept the Passover upon the 14th day of the month. For the priests and the Levites were purified together, all of them were pure, and killed the Passover for all the children of the captivity, and for their brethren, the priests, and for themselves. That's just saying how Moses and Aaron, who were over the Levitic priesthood, the law, they was over the law, how they were the ones that sacrificed and killed everything, and they anointed everything, and they did it according to the law, according to the way God would have them do it. Ezekiel 45:21 through 24 says, in the first month of the 14th day of the month, he shall have the Passover, a feast of 7 days. Unleavened bread shall be eaten, and upon that day shall the prince prepare for himself and for the people of the land a bullock for a sin offering. And 7 days the feast shall prepare a burnt offering to the Lord, 7 bullocks, 7 rams, without blemish daily, the 7 days, and a kid of goat daily for a sin offering. And shall prepare a meat offering of an ephod for a bullock, and an ephod for a ram, and a hin of oil for an ephah. So that's saying for every day, for 7 days, you have to cook a bullock. You have to sacrifice a bullock, a lamb, and a goat, all three, and eat the feast of unleavened bread. So those are the exact things that you have to do. I always have wine for a wine offering. That's symbolic for his blood too. Wine, because in the book of Revelation it say he's gonna come back with his garments gonna be covered in wine, symbolic for blood. So I always have a wine offering that I offer too. But I truly try to keep exactly what he states here. Like I try to eat beef and lamb and goat all 3 days, all 7 days. I'm sorry, but yeah, and I prepare my bread myself. Some people can buy bread, like some people buy mitzvah bread. Some people buy pita bread. Some people eat tortillas, because all of them supposed to be leaven free. None of they don't rise. They don't have any leaven in them. So, but if you can prepare your own, prepare your own. But if you can't, those are some suggestions. John 6:4 says, and the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was near. John 2:23 says, now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover, in the feast day, many believed in his name when they saw the miracles which he did. See, that's what he's doing now. He brought miracles all over the place. Just pay attention. If you just pay attention, you will see so much stuff going on where he is delivering his people. And deliverance also means that he's going to bring his people unscatter them from the four corners. So you can see that by the Hispanics coming across that border and they trying to stop them and they can't. That's deliverance. He's delivering his people from bondage over and wherever they coming from. Yeah. So that's I said that it's the Hispanics is the tribe of Issachar. So yeah, he's definitely working. He's working, and wherever you are in the world, if it's not his plan for you to be there, as his people, he gonna bring you back to where you're supposed to be. You can try to stay there all you want, but you can't, because he gonna bring you back. And two, a lot of people gonna go back to their lands in September, because September is the Jubilee. And that's what he said. Every man gonna get his land back. Everything that's concerning him, he's gonna free you. He gonna give you all your belongings back. So that's why I said all of these world powers, the three world powers, I just did that video where they got to be destroyed by September. And I truly believe that the Passover, this Passover, like the death angels from the first Passover, how God destroyed all of those people, I know that's what he getting ready to do for this Passover. It's too symbolic. Everything is lining up. Everything is just lining up. So I know that's the same thing that's going to happen. These last few Passovers that I celebrated, some people may have died during that time. But I know a lot of lives are going to be lost this year for Passover, because guess what? It's symbolic for the very first Passover. So, yeah. So, I'm going to read. This is going to be my last one. Deuteronomy 16:1-8. It says, it says, observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover unto the Lord thy God. For in the month of Abib, the Lord thy God brought thee forth out of Egypt by night. That thou shalt therefore sacrifice the Passover unto the Lord thy God of the flock and of the herd in the place which the Lord shall choose to place his name. Thou shalt eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread, therewith even the bread of affliction. For thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt in haste, that thou mayest remember the day when thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt, all the days of thy life, and there shall be no leavened bread seen in thee or in the coast 7 days, neither shall thou there any things of the flesh which thou sacrifice the first at even remain all night until the morning. So he's saying when you cook or you sacrifice the lamb, and you roast it or whatever you do to it, like Kyra, you cook it, roast it. He's saying it all has to be eaten at that night. You can't leave any till the next morning. Can't do it. It's abominable to him. You can't do that. And then he says, thou sacrifice that first day at even, remain all night until the morning. He said, thou mayest not sacrifice the Passover within any of thy gates, which the Lord thy God giveth thee. He said, thou mayest not sacrifice. Okay, so he said, but 6 says, but of the place which the Lord thy God shall choose to place his name in, there thou shalt sacrifice Passover at evening, and at the going down of the sun, at the season that thou camest forth out of Egypt. So he's saying, wherever his name is, wherever he placed you, wherever he sent you to dwell, wherever your living quarters is, that's where you're going to have the sacrifice, because that's where his name is. That's where he placed you. So therefore he's saying his name is on this place. And it says, and thou shalt roast and eat it in the place which the Lord thy God shall choose, and thou shalt turn in mourning and go into thy tents. He's saying it should be done all night until the morning. You sacrificing, you keeping the Passover all night until the morning. And then in the morning you go and you turn into your tents. And you do whatever you do in your tents. Yeah. But he's saying sacrifice, Passover is done in the evening, because that's when he brought the children of Israel out of bondage, in the evening. So like I said, this Passover is so symbolic for the very first Passover. So significant, because it means everything going on right now with the Most High is what happened in the very first Passover. Everything that he's doing right now is concerning when he brought us out of Egypt the first time. He bringing us out of Egypt the second time. Same exact thing. Everything that happened in when him freeing the children of Israel from bondage the first time is the same thing that he's doing right now. Right now. So that's why you guys should know what he doing. You should be paying attention to what he doing. And if you really want to pay attention, go back to the very first Passover and see what all the things happened during that Passover, and see if they happening right now. Yeah. So, and it says, 6 said, the last one, Verse 8 says, 6 days thou shalt eat unleavened bread, and on the seventh day shall be a solemn assembly to the Lord thy God. Thou shalt do no work therein. So yes, so if you guys are really thinking about keeping the Passover, then go to those scriptures that I read. The book of Exodus, Kings, First Chronicles, Second Chronicles. The Passover is Leviticus. You find it. Well, I know it's in Exodus. So yeah, because Exodus mean exit, meaning they're exit out of Egypt from bondage. So right now we're in an Exodus. We're right now, this time in the world, we're in an Exodus. So we're coming out of Egypt. We're coming out of bondage again. Because remember, I keep saying how America is symbolic for Egypt. It's symbolic for um, Babylon, and Sodom. Yeah. So yeah. So family. So with that being said, I just wanted to give you guys an indication of how to keep the Passover. At least you got some kind of guide. If you haven't been keeping it and you really want to keep it, kind of go in that book and read what God says about the Passover, and kind of use what I just gave you guys. Let it be help you a little bit. So with that being said, family, I thank you for visiting my video, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.